You are listening to the Enormocast.
One would think that a dirtbag like Alex Honnold would sit back and let that sweet, sweet free solo money wash over him, like the sweat washed over your armpits watching him paddle up the free blast sans rope. Didn't look exactly solid, did it? But he ain't partying with DiCaprio quite yet. Instead, he's doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on the Honnold Foundation, his nonprofit dedicated to creating equity through solar projects around the globe. And now Black Diamond is giving you a swank opportunity to get on board with the Honnold signature chalk bag and solution harness. What's the chalk bag like? Well, I've got one. It holds chalk. Sits there for when you're sweaty. No dumb pockets or zippers or anything. And the solution harness, well, Alex Honnold doesn't always climb in a harness, but when he does, it's a solution. But most importantly, the Honnold Foundation gets a kickback from BD every time you buy a Honnold signature product. So check them out at blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop. And if you don't want commerce getting in the way of your giving, donate directly at honnoldfoundation.com and keep that ratty old harness that scares your partners.
We gotta get
Listen, where are you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
big
big
house. We
place,
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000 seats?
We
really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed traveling with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime is good for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is about 12:30 p.m. on October 10th, 2018. No, October 11th, 2018. Where do the days go? And this is episode 161 of the Enormocast, a conversation with climber Jordan Cannon. Not a household name, but Jordan is getting after it, a young wall climber, a young climber steeped in tradition. And I think we're going to see a lot more from this guy in the coming years. And before that, I just want to mention how much fun I'm having with my advertising, because the two most famous American climbers at this moment, Tommy Caldwell and Alex Honnold, are both affiliated with at least one of my main sponsors. In the case of Tommy Caldwell at Sportiva, and Alex is affiliated with both my main sponsors, Black Diamond and Sportiva. So despite the fact that I don't know if I have any legal right to use them in my advertising, and I fully expect someday to get a cease and desist letter from their lawyers, maybe Andra's too, I don't know. Alex will be like, oh yeah, dude, my lawyer said you have to cease and desist. Whatever that means, no big deal. And I've been saying Alex Honnold so much on the show that it's almost like a parody I'm creating over here. Anyhow, just want to let you know that that's what's going on in my brain as far as my advertising is concerned. I don't know if all you guys skip it or if you hang around and listen to it. I hope you do, because I tell my sponsors that you do, even though I have no idea and no way to know, and if that actually means you buy anything. But please consider supporting the sponsors that support me. It's how this works. And I'll just keep saying Andra and Honnold and Caldwell. And I had to get a DeJulian in there too, because she's at Sportiva. But her lawyers actually scare me. Lawyers locked in their offices with cases of Red Bull should scare everyone. Why has Sasha DeJulian not been on the Enormocast? Well, I'm working on that. Her globetrotting schedule makes her very difficult to pin down. Okay, let's talk about Jordan Cannon. First of all, this is a climbing one, which is good because this is a climbing podcast. And the last episode, we were not talking about climbing very much, which I heard about from you guys. So we're back to climbing. Doing a climby podcast with Jordan Cannon, young climber. I've been interested in what he's been doing because he has sort of a different path for the young climber these days, I think, anyway. The path of climbing in a gym, forever and then doing comps and then, you start to go outside a little bit. And then, of course, after you master sport climbing and bouldering, you start posting pictures of you trad climbing. Well, Jordan skipped a lot of that. He went straight to climbing big routes pretty much and got into wall climbing very early in his career, just a couple of years after starting climbing altogether, which that kind of audacity can really pay off. And it did in his case. So the interesting thing is in the last couple of days, I've been talking to Jordan, texting pretty much, although he talked on the phone one time, and he's been up on Golden Gate on El Capitan. You've heard of that, right? El Capitan, Spanish for the captain. Working on it. And when I say working on it, I mean literally as a custodian. He talked to me and I had sort of some complaints just about what kind of mess the route was in terms of old tat, old bolts, some bolts gone, some old rivets about to be gone, something that had been sitting up there for a long time without much love. And he's made it a mission over the last 5 or 6 days to be up there, mostly on his own, cleaning that thing up, replacing that tat, replacing a bolt or two, and getting the route into shape for the world-class status that it deserves. Plus, he wants to do it, which, is sort of self-serving, but a lot of times that's how these projects get done, and I'm pretty impressed with that kind of dedication. While most people muddle through, clipping the old tat, and then forget about it, like I did, Jordan went up there to fix it and make it into something that's modern anyway. And before you start flaming him on the taco, he's replacing bolts, not adding them. So I literally got a phone call from him while he was in the middle of the route, and we talked about a little problem he was having with his drill. Not his power drill, his hand drill, of course, because it's Yosemite. But I thought that was kind of funny. I'm like sitting in my living room. If I had an armchair, a.k.a. the armchair mountaineer, I would have been sitting in it. I don't have one, so I sat on the couch. And I just thought it was pretty funny and ironic that this young, really good climber, much stronger than I am, much more likely to do great things, is calling me for advice about how to deal with his drill that was stuck. I don't know why that struck me as so funny. It's kind of like calling your grandpa, because you're having a problem with your email. But we had a nice chat, and while we were chatting, the knob that he was slung to slipped off, and he took a big swing. And so I basically was like, dude, put your phone away, concentrate on what you're doing. I do not want to be responsible for anything that happens to you up there. And he texted me when he got to the top, jugged out to the top, and realized he forgot his headlamp. And then he did the entire East Ledges descent in the dark, by feel, I suppose. I don't know if there's a moon out. It's been cloudy and snowy and rainy here, so I don't know. He made it, though. That's the kind of guy we're talking to today, just so amped and excited that he can blast through the East Ledges descent in the dark. No problem. And one last quick note, we do talk about the accident on the free blast from the spring with Tim Klein and Jason Wells. Unfortunately, Jordan and his partner were front row witnesses to that terrible accident. And before the interview, I asked Jordan if we could address it, and he said yes, but, was a little wary and didn't want to spend too much time on it. But we do bring it up in here. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on that accident, we did address it over at my other podcast now, the new podcast, The Run Out, at runoutpodcast.com. I think it was the second episode. Anyway, so we get into it here. Just a heads up that I was treading into some stuff that Jordan, was definitely wary to talk about. It was only had been a few weeks since he had been there, not only to witness the accident, but he and his partner got the third person to the ground afterwards, and we get into it later on in the podcast. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoy this one, and please check out Jordan's social media. I think he does a great job over there, and he has a good head on his shoulders, a good reverence for the tradition and where he wants to take it. Hey folks, have you fiends seen the Don Waller free solo yet? Well, spoiler alert, the one thing all the principal climbers in those amazing films have in common besides the bedhead and spectacular abs are TC pros from Sportiva. That's right, those fellas trusted their dreams to the face and crack shoe designed by Caldwell himself to tackle the big stone all day, every day. And Tommy wants your dreams to come true too. So if you want to stick to rock like your elbows stick to the table at Golden Corral, and you want your toes to luxuriate inside cracks like it's their home.
That's your home! Are you too good for your home?
Then check out the TC Pros and all of Sportiva's great shoes at Sportiva.com or your favorite local shop. And yeah, TC stands for Tommy Caldwell. Am I the only one that took a while to figure that out?
He's been just so cool with doing his shows for me. Because that one we did...
the first one, right?
Well, the second one we did last summer where he, about soloing the nose.
The free rider.
Or the free rider. It was like fucking... I mean, I was kind of like the first guy he talked to about it.
Cool.
And while we were doing it, I'm like thinking, like, I don't know if you're supposed to be telling me all this, Alex, because it's like...
Because of the movie and everything.
Yeah, because of the movie, and it's like all under wraps. But I wasn't going to stop him, but I'm just like, is Jimmy Chin going to come and like smash my computer and like...
Give me the file.
Give me the file, exactly. It's like Zoolander, the files. There's no files in here.
I'm sure he was stoked because he, to talk to a climber about it as opposed to...
Yeah, no, I got that impression
the
too.
media barrage afterwards.
But it was super cool. And people, it was a great candid interview about the whole thing. So, okay, so that covers that. And that's about it.
Okay.
That's all you really need to know.
I'm like surprised you even asked me to be on the show. I didn't know you knew anything about me or my climbing, so I'm interested.
So that's the thing, is that, I noticed your climbing. Social media is this thing, and for all the good and the bad, the good is that, I can like clue into what all my friends are up to, but also, find these people that I think are doing interesting things. And I don't know why yours popped up, but I started watching what you're doing, my impression was there's a bit of this old school vibe and how you're approaching climbing, which I thought was interesting, considering with the social media feeds, it's all 90% of it is people filming themselves like hangboarding or like doing the moon board or whatever.
Like who cares?
That's what caught my eye at first. And then, there was like you're younger, and so you have, I think, a sense of what social media is and how to use it. And my impression was that you had, this idea of how to present yourself through social media. It didn't seem that random. So anyway, I want to ask you about your climbing first, and you were nodding your head when I said old school. Do you think that's a decent impression of sort of the way you approach climbing?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely identify more with the old school approach and the older climbers than the modern gym climber, people just starting to get outside. Who have like their whole focus on performance and training and whatnot. Yeah, I don't really identify with that too much.
Why not? I mean, what's different about the way you started climbing, or the way? Where does this attitude come from?
Well,
I guess is my question, because you're right in that demographic in terms of your age.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I think it's because the main reason I got into climbing was for the adventure of it.
Okay.
I had been playing sports my whole life, but and never really identified too much with any one of them. And for a long time, I thought climbing was just a sport or an activity that I enjoyed doing, but I didn't really know anything about the history of it. And when I moved out to California and kind of began to learn that it's more of a lifestyle and a culture with a deep history that, you can be a part of, that's what really made me realize, like, oh, okay, climbing's so much more than just this fun activity,
Where'd you move from?
From South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why'd you move?
To go to college, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I graduated in high school in South Carolina, and then I did my freshman year at the College of Charleston and tried to play soccer for them. That was like my main sport. I was really into playing soccer, and basically like didn't cut it on the team, And then it's actually kind of a funny story. I'd always wanted to move to California at some point. In high school, I thought I wanted to be like a filmmaker or whatever. Yeah, after I basically got like dropped from the soccer team, I was kind of accepted, like, okay, I'm not going to go to college this year or for that like fall semester. And all my friends had started back at school in South Carolina. And then I got like this random call from this coach in San Diego. He's like, school starts tomorrow. Like, I want you on the team. I'll give you this much money. Like, if you want to come and make it happen, like get on a plane tonight. I was like, oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah. And so I like totally like just
You got
changed.
recruited.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it kind of ended up being a bit of a joke. You know, it was like the small private Christian school. It was like their first year team and everything. But I mean, the way I look at it now is that it was like what got me out to California, and that was really all I needed. I was just kind of looking for that opportunity. Did
you play then there for your college career, as it were?
I did, yeah. I ended up staying at that school for 3 years and graduating there. My initial plan was to play there for a semester and then look at the bigger schools, you know, like UCSD, SDSU, all those places. Because the California like soccer scene is pretty big. Mm-hmm. And I'd always kind of had dreams of living there and maybe trying to play for one of those schools. But the NCAA turned all like political, and they were like, if you want to transfer, that'll be your third 4-year school. So you'd have to redshirt or sit out a year. And I was like, that means I get to play my senior year, and then nobody wants to give you money. So it was like, that's the whole thing. I was like, whatever, I'll just stay.
Okay.
So
it was a good experience?
I actually ended up quitting the soccer team. Oh. It wasn't a very good experience at all. No. I like didn't identify with anybody on my team. I got injured. I actually tore my hip flexor my like the first game of the season, my junior year. And then basically just became like the team bitch, you know? And like cuz I couldn't do anything, and everybody thought I was faking it for some reason. I was like, what the heck? I was like, you guys think I'm happy that you're taking my playing time in my position? I was like, what do you think? But ironically, that was the time when I was starting to go out to Joshua Tree, and I got a job at like the local bouldering gym. And like climbing didn't hurt my hip at all. Hiking a little bit, but like the movement of it, I was like, I kind of took it as a sign. I was like, climbing is presenting me with so many cool opportunities and happiness, and soccer is just like pissing me off and making me miserable. I was like, I'm just gonna quit and join the or not join anything, just start going climbing.
Whatever it is you join when your brain switches on to climbing.
Yeah.
Join the cosmos.
Who knows? Yeah. Everybody thought I was kind of going downhill because I like quit the soccer team. I bought a van. I moved out of my apartment, and I just like started dirtbagging and going to Joshua Tree, you know? And everybody's like, whoa, like what is going on with this guy?
Like, yeah. He's having a psychotic break or something.
Yeah. But I was stoked. I mean, I kind of liked that I was, that I separated myself from all of that, all that bull crap, you know? Just did my own thing at that point.
Right. And then, how old are you now?
24.
Okay, so that was pretty recently, really. Well,
yeah, really not that long ago. I mean, I moved to California like 5 years ago.
Okay.
So I was 18.
Right. And so you're climbing, I mean, that seems like a pretty big progression to the kind of stuff that you're doing now in Yosemite, like pretty fast.
Maybe. I don't know. People like to say that, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like when I commit to something, I like go full in, you know, and I kind of think that a lot of people would see a similar progression if they put in the same amount of time that I like to think that I have, or something, you know.
When you were saying that you were playing sports and didn't always identify with that stuff, but you kept at soccer, you know, that's a kind of a story that I hear pretty frequently in one sense. Yeah. In that sense of you know, the path that you're on, it's working, it feels okay, and it's like easy to stay with it. But when you got into climbing, did you find that the athleticism that you already had, obviously that's going to help, but what about, you know, when you say you've dedicated yourself and you're on this progression, were you taking like things you knew about, you know, training and being physical from soccer and applying it? I mean, in terms of like you've been coached for 12 years of your life or more, like did it make it any easier, you think, or did you just toss all that stuff and just go climbing? No, like even when I was playing soccer, like the biggest trouble I had, especially when I got into college and even like in high school was all the training, you know? Right. Well, I think naturally I'm like a better endurance athlete than I am strength wise, you know, which can translate well to climbing because I like to do a lot of high mileage, you know, with a lot of hiking and whatnot. But yeah, like when I got to college, they were like putting me on like intense training programs, trying to get me to gain weight because I was smaller than a lot of the other people I was competing against, and I was just like getting pushed around. I could like outrun them all day, but you know, like physically they were just like smoking me. So, so yeah, when I did like throw all the soccer stuff out the door and start climbing, I wasn't thinking at all about training. I was just thinking about getting outside as much as possible. Yeah. And so then, you know, my original question was, about this old school idea.
Yeah.
So what in your personality, or what was it, the draw there, like where you were going out to Josh and then you started to think, again, you're in this cohort, you're actually working at a gym.
Yeah.
But you're kind of going in sort of what is a little bit of a novel direction now.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, which sounds strange, but.
Right. I see it.
Yeah.
I wish more people were kind of headed in the same direction because then I'd have more climbing partners.
Right. But then the routes would be more crowded too. So.
That's true. Yeah. It's like you got to find the balance there.
When everybody's like, we need to get all these gym climbers out.
You're like,
outside.
no.
I'm like, no, we don't. We do not need to do that.
You just got to keep the core climbing group strong so that they don't over dominate us.
Yeah. So anyway, my question being like, what do you think it was about that style or that idea that, was it because you were burnt out on like the structure of soccer? Because a lot of that type of climbing has a lot of structure to it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I've always been kind of interested in history in general, particularly with the activities that I participate in. Like when I was playing soccer, I was way into World Cup history and following different clubs like in the European League and whatnot. And, Pele scored the game-winning goal of the World Cup and like these years. So I was always kind of fascinated and found inspiration from that. And so as soon as I started climbing and started to figure out that side of it, that's like really where I kind of took off with that. Mm-hmm. And when I went to Joshua Tree the first time, I didn't have a guidebook. I didn't know what a guidebook was at the time. So I just wandered around Hidden Valley Campground, like looking for things to climb. And, didn't climb anything, just ended up scrambling around on a bunch of rocks. But then whenever I did get a guidebook, like all the history that's in that and just reading about the first ascents and little stories, that's where I started to pay attention and started learning about, the Stone Masters.
Right.
And everything.
Yeah, you're sort of steeped in it down there in Southern California.
Well, yeah, it was really cool because it wasn't intentional by any means. I ended up going to school in Southern California and climbing at the local areas there. But then as I started learning about the Stone Masters, I was like, oh man, I'm kind of getting a very similar start to what they had, climbing at the local areas, like perfecting their skills in Josh and Talkeets and then, eventually like making their way to Yosemite and the big mountains. So I was like, it's kind of a perfect fit. Yeah. Yeah. They totally like laid the path and I was like, okay, I'm going to like do what they did and like train while I'm here. And then like as soon as I graduated college, I was like on the road, within 15 minutes from getting my degree up in Bishop and hanging out in Yosemite. And that's kind of where I've found my place since. Yeah,
did you skip the psychedelics and things like that, or did you go down that road?
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay. That's like totally not my scene.
It's like I'm gonna do everything exactly like this Stone Masters.
No, not too much.
I get some drugs.
I'm not much of a partier. I don't really drink, so.
Right on. That's a good call. You said you were just climbing with Max and Mark, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that was their whole jam too. Like we're gonna just go climbing.
Yeah, that's what I liked so much about their interview when they talked about how like when they go to Yosemite they like showed up with a calendar and a program, right. And I was like, yes, like that. I hate going to the valley nowadays and people are just like moseying around. Mm-hmm. It's like exactly the same, I imagine, from like how they described it. Mm-hmm. Just people hanging out at the deli, like, oh, what do you want to go do? And it's like nobody ends up doing anything. You're like, what the heck, you guys? Like, like you come here to ascend and do big stuff.
Right.
There's kind of this illusion where you just like, if you're outside the valley, it seems like big stuff is just happening there all the time, but it's not always the case.
No. So it's not always the case.
Yeah.
It's famous for that, I think, because I've talked about it on the show too. Different eras, are good and bad, but it's definitely famous for, people going there and just kind of losing motivation.
Yeah.
Or like the dream realized isn't exactly what they thought it was going to be, kind of thing.
I'm working seasonally at the moment, like during the winter and the summer, so I can take off during the fall and spring, which are the best climbing times in the valley. And it's like when I'm there, I have 2 months, 1 month, whatever. I'm like, well, this is my time off, like got to make the most of it, so I don't just mosey around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the idea like that you would have no job or you would have no life pressures and you could just climb all the time. Like I think there's definitely a sort of hidden bad side to that idea. Because
Yeah.
I think, if you're a professional climber, that's one thing. You've got this motivator.
Mm-hmm.
But if for some reason you were just some sort of like ne'er-do-well that could just do whatever they wanted, I mean, those people in all walks of life a lot of times don't have a ton of motivation.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I'm more motivated. To
I was
get
told
after
that by Josh Wharton about having a kid, that I would be more motivated, but I'm
to go climbing.
Yeah, just because your time
Because
is
you have
so
less
precious.
time.
I'm kind of still waiting for that to kick in
Yeah, I feel like it would just stress me out
a little bit. Yeah, and it's just a pain in the ass to get out of the house. That sometimes you're just like, forget it.
Yeah, it is a lot of work.
But when you said that, I kind of realized that the hang around the valley all the time people usually aren't the ones that are as motivated as the folks that have carved out this specific amount of time. Because why go climbing today when you can go climb tomorrow and you can go climb the next day?
Yeah,
So,
right.
Yeah,
And that can happen when you are there with the intention of staying for like a couple months to kind of lose a little bit of motivation while you're there, as opposed to like coming in for a smash and grab mission, which I know a lot of people do. Because the valley scene can be kind of rough sometimes, especially during peak season with all the tourists and whatnot. Like, it's not as glamorous as everybody makes it seem.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's so hard to exist there.
Yeah.
When you're not climbing.
Yeah.
I mean, with just where you're going to stay and getting around the valley, and yeah, it's pretty epic when you're off the rock. Luckily, the rock climbing is so good that it just makes up for it. But
eventually, whenever I start to feel like suffocated or just like burnt out on the scene, I just try and just leave.
Right.
Go elsewhere.
Keep
the motivation high.
Yeah. Elsewhere in California.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was saying before, I'm like I feel like I've been limiting myself. I've been so psyched on like the California climbing scene that I'm like, maybe I should, like start traveling. I mean, I want to climb it all.
Right.
And go all these places, but it's hard to, like, not spending a season in Yosemite just feels like a sin to me at this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you'll get over it.
Yeah, it's local too,
Yeah,
so it's like it shouldn't feel like that because I can go back there whenever.
Yeah. I mean, it's a common complaint on the Enormocast because people are always telling me about all these Californians I should interview, and I'm like, it's rough because they never leave, and so I have to go there, and I haven't. I mean, I went.
That's true.
We've talked about this. I went in May.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I've been to California in forever. And they don't ever come through here.
Yeah, that seems surprising. I was like expecting to see you in Yosemite at some point, and never.
No, I kind of gave her up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's increasingly been difficult to be there.
Yeah.
And it's an expensive. I mean, it's a ways to go for me.
Yeah.
So I kind of I was there I think in 2008 was the last time I was there before this time. So.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was a
Jeez,
decade.
Yeah, I was still in high school at that point in South Carolina.
But I went back. I got back and climbed.
Yeah. I saw you guys suffering up there on the wall in the rain. It was pretty cool. I was like, "Who's that?"
We're
that's
chilling.
Kalous up there.
Yeah, just chilling, making podcasts.
Yeah,
up there in the tent.
Yeah, I listened to that.
Yeah,
I was hoping to get some good information.
No, mostly
not too much.
It wasn't. It was mostly like me complaining about how hard it was. But,
midlife crisis on El Cap.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Anyway, it was harder than I expected. It wasn't harder than I expected it. It was harder than I remembered. In a way, it was kind of wild. So, but times have changed. But
Randy had the opposite experience.
Oh, really?
Climbing the nose. Do you remember?
Oh yeah. But you guys did it in a day.
Yeah, which is of course easier. You were trying to free climb, so it's hard to compare the two. But the last time you had climbed El Cap, I think, was like in, I think you said like 89 or something.
Yeah, Randy Levitt.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure like the last route he did on El Cap was like some A5, hard, scary thing. He had never climbed it in a day, so like of course going up the nose was going to be like way more casual than what he was used to.
Yeah.
Even later on in life, when he's not as fit or whatever. But
yeah, he's pretty fit though.
He is. Yeah. He totally impressed me. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, he's just a really good climber.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Like one of
Although he didn't even put his climbing shoes on the whole route.
Oh, really?
Which you kind of got to give him crap for, but
yeah, his feet are all swollen up from being in the ocean too much.
I'll let it slide. I know. I was surprised he even came up to Yosemite in the first place.
That's cool though.
Yeah, because every time we had talked, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to come up," And then, we like make this plan to go climb something. And then he's like, oh, wait, never mind. The swell in Mexico's too good. Flying down there. See you later, Right. Which I don't blame him, Yeah. He's all psyched on surfing right now.
Yeah, he's living the dream. The last time he climbed it was 89?
I think so. I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Because then that would have been...
Maybe in the 90s. I don't remember.
No, that would have been like, something like the Scorched Earth or...
Yeah. He was telling me how, like, mainly the reason why he never climbed the nose or, like, the South is because all the hard aid climbers deem that as like, oh, too many cracks, too easy. Yeah,
well, that's why I've never done the nose.
I know. What the heck, dude? You need to go do the nose in a day.
It's the same reason, though.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I think it's too easy. It's just that I was over on that other side doing the
I get it.
Dangling on the little widgets.
It's kind of like the standard now,
Yeah.
To be hanging in the valley, you got to do the nose.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it while we were on that wall. I was like, why don't I just come here and do the nose in a day and like go home and go to bed?
Yeah. Instead of having all this contemplation.
Yeah, it was pretty good time up there. But so back to sort of your again, this like digging around for the reverence that you have for the past. Can you tell me about like you've been climbing Yosemite, you've got a pretty, in the short time you've been doing it, you've accumulated a pretty solid reputation and resume. Have you been encountering like some of these people that you had sort of like read about and having this kind of experience?
That's been like the coolest part. Well, yeah, we can take it back a little further. I was going to say earlier, when I started climbing in Joshua Tree, and like I said, I got that first guidebook and was like reading the history in there. Was also shortly after that, I saw the movie Valley Uprising, which seems like silly to say, but at the time that like totally changed my life. It connected like a lot of pieces together. Like I had heard a little bit of history about Yosemite and all these people here and there, but I hadn't like put the whole picture together.
Sure.
And that kind of laid it out in a format where I was like, whoa, it all makes sense,
Right.
And that's like, I asked my friend at the gym when he saw it, I was like, oh, what'd you think? He's like, oh, it's going to make you want to quit your job and like move to Yosemite. And that's kind of, what I ended up doing.
Right on.
Once I graduated college, but within a month from seeing that movie, I was like living in my van. Just kind of
getting ready.
Yeah, getting ready. Suffering.
Cleaning it up.
Yeah.
Cleaning up the life to be free and easy in Yosemite.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, playing soccer was not making me happy. I was living in an apartment with like 7 other dudes, and I don't live very well with people in general. And I was like spending way too much money. I was like, this all just sucks, I was like, I just want to have fun. And it really fired me up. That's where I finally felt like I had a good sense of direction.
What did you go to school for?
English and art.
Oh, right.
I basically didn't.
Nothing wrong with that. I have an English degree.
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
I know. But like people like to give you crap because like, oh, cool. Like, what are you going to use that for? I'm like, I don't know.
Start a podcast.
Yeah, start a podcast.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Learn how to write. I don't know. I like writing a little bit.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it seems like at some point, your work. What's your seasonal job?
Right now is like the most legit setup I've had. I'm just working at the Patagonia Distribution Center in Reno, in the warehouse, like hustling boxes and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They understand motivations to get outside. So.
They do. Yeah. The work environment there is really, really cool, really casual, and everybody, that's like a big part of their culture.
Yeah.
They want people there who are passionate about the outdoors, and a lot of people into snowboarding and skiing up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then my manager is a climber too, so he like totally understands when I'm like, oh, cool, we want to like go to Yosemite in the fall. Mm-hmm. He's like, okay, cool, yeah, come back. And
I wanted to ask you. I just realized I missed this question that I had in my mind, so I want to go back again. But because I get occasionally, these emails. Well, I always talk about how inclusive and like open and fun and great the climbing community is.
Yeah.
And then I get emails where people are like, I really love it, but it's actually a lot harder for me to get into it than I thought it would be, which then makes me think like, if you're going to climb outside in particular, like, yeah, you know what? It can be hard. It can be tricky and to find the right people so
yeah.
It sounded like you were a little bit on your own, or did you have a cohort that was motivated with you when you Like, because when you said you were wandering around Joshua Tree, oh, that's so sad. You know?
Yeah, no, I was actually with my friend Hayden, who he had a membership to Solid Rock, this like old gym in San Marcos at the time. And so I kind of just like invited him along with me, and he had never been climbing outside either. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we kind of just like fully went for it that weekend. We eventually met up with like these German guys who were traveling, and I got to climb with them. They had a rack and everything. Mm-hmm. But no, for a while I was kind of on my own. I was working at this bouldering gym in San Diego, The Wall. Yeah, I mean, I was the only trad climber there, basically. Mm-hmm. You know, I eventually made my friend Jesse that I met there. We would go out to Mount Woodson and Joshua Tree together a bunch and kind of like learn our systems, you know, how to place gear and make anchors and all that. But still, yeah, I've kind of always struggled with finding partners. But yeah, I kind of just figured it out on my own at that time.
Right. And did you, when you first started going to Yosemite, where did you have a person you were going with, or did you try to dip in there without really having any sort of setup like that?
Yeah, I kind of tried to dip in by myself. When I was in college, I would just go up on spring break. That was like the longest period of time I had to go up there. But then once I graduated, yeah, I would try to line up partners. But the first time I tried to do that, I showed up with my friend Frank. He was there like a week before me and had fallen bouldering and like hurt his ankle. So I was like, what the heck, dude? We were supposed to climb all this stuff. And he's like, no worries, man. Like, I found a partner for you. I was like, I met him in the meadow. He wants to climb El Cap. And I was like, okay, I don't really want to climb El Cap, but I was like, who is it? He's like, oh, this guy Steve. He's like, you got to come meet him. And I like meet him at the bridge, and I'm like driving up. I'm like, oh, I know that guy. And I'm like, he's like, oh, hey, I'm Steve. And I'm like, yeah, I know you. It was Shapoopy, you know?
Oh, it was.
Yeah. So I climbed my first El Cap route with Shapoopy.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it was pretty cool.
Yeah. You're just like, oh, I think this should go all right.
Yeah.
So I think this guy can be a solid partner.
Right. Yeah, no, it ended up being like his 120th ascent of El Cap, you know.
Nice.
I knew he had many ascents under his belt. I was just surprised. I was like, man, you must be really desperate to want to like just go up El Cap with me. Yeah, I was like, I thought he was just going to be dragging me along, but it ended up like going like pretty cool. My first thought was like, oh yeah, cool. Like, you want to do the nose or something? I didn't really think like, oh, he's probably, he's done those routes a million times. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, man, Flight of the Albatross. I was like, I have no idea what that is, but okay.
Sick.
Yeah.
So how much did you guys go up there for a few days?
Yeah, like 6 days.
Jesus.
It was kind of epic.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you just like rock up, meet Steve Schneider, and then what? You're on a wall a couple days later.
The first thing I did when I got there, I think, was like went and soloed Snake Dyke or something, get just some hiking in, and then met Steve the next day. And he, of course, was like slightly skeptical going up with me. So he was like, oh, let's just like do the free blast and see how it goes. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't climbed the free blast yet. He had done it a bunch of times. So he's like, oh yeah, I'll just like let you lead the whole thing. I'll just jug. And it was cool. I was like, because I was psyched on free climbing at the time. Still am. And so yeah, we climbed the free blast, got to the top of that. And he was like, so like, what do you think? You want to keep going? I was like, sure, So we wrapped back down, which I don't approve of now, that style. But then we hauled, we like packed, we hauled all our gear up the next day and then kept going.
Okay.
But dude, yeah, I kind of got sandbagged. Well, cause I wasn't planning on climbing El Cap. Like I said,
right.
I wasn't like into aid climbing. And, so he's like, while we were packing up, he's like, yeah, you got a hammer, you got a haul bag, you got a ledge. I'm like, no, Steve, like, what the heck, dude? And he's like, okay, like, we'll figure it out. And I was mainly just worried about not having a portaledge. He had like a single A5 that was like falling apart by the end. But he looked at the topo. He's like, oh, I think if we get to here, and here, these nights, there's natural ledges and you'll be fine. But he hadn't climbed the route, so he really didn't know what he was talking about.
Right.
And the topo kind of was misleading. Like every ledge we thought was going to be good ended up being shitty. And all the ones we thought were going to be bad were good. So yeah. So I like ended up sleeping in the haul bag and like hanging in slings half the time. It was like but I was psyched. It was like, I was like, man, these guys used to hang in hammocks. Like, it isn't that bad.
This haul bag's awesome.
Yeah. I just kind of tried to make the most of it.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
That's kind of a drag.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun, but I mean...
It was kind of a drag.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fun But in the middle of the night when you're just like,
Yeah, I didn't sleep very much.
Right.
Are you familiar with the canoe though?
I know that ledge that's like just attached by who
Yeah,
knows
it's
what.
pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like this, just like Thank God ledge. It's like a foot wide. There's like a crack in the back. It's all detached.
Yeah,
it's kind of scary, but
yeah, it's all detached all the way around.
Yeah.
It's one of those like bat shits holding it on or whatever.
yeah, right. But we got stormed on. We spent 2 nights on there, so those were actually like it was fun to sleep on there, like on the head wall, on the shield. It was like pretty sweet.
What were you doing for like? How were you out of the rain then, or you weren't?
I wasn't. I had like a Patagonia like Houdini rain jacket and like a bivy sack, but it was raining all day for 2 days. Like I got soaked through and just like suffering there. And Steve like was hanging out underneath his portaledge.
Yeah,
He was all set up. Yeah.
He had a fly and everything.
He didn't have a fly. No.
Oh, so he was sitting under his.
He was sitting under his ledge, but he had like Gore-Tex jacket and pants, and
Uh-huh.
I had like this little windbreaker.
You know what's wild is that Steve Schneider like would just climb a wall without a fly or anything like that in this day and age. I think he'd have like a super nice ledge.
Yeah, you'd think,
Yeah.
but he's a little old school too. You know? So
right.
I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was like, shouldn't you have a like rain fly? I was just like, oh,
This is how it's done.
this is how it's done. Although he led all the hard 8, of course, but I mean, he still like let me do my fair share. And he kept getting on my case because I wasn't like placing any pins or anything. I was like doing all these pitches on like tiny nuts. And he's like, what the heck? He's like, why'd you place a nut there? It's like a bomber pin placement. I was like, I don't know how to place any pins. I was like, I know how to place nuts. That's what I did.
Right.
It was pretty cool.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's old school, but most people are like, if you don't have to pound an iron in, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like kind of amazing. Neither of us took like a hideous whipper up there.
Really?
Yeah. I was surprised. At least for myself. He was solid, of course.
Right.
But yeah.
Well,
anyways, first time climbing El Cap, I was like, that was so slow. It was cool. I was like thankful for the experience. I learned a lot. And of course, like classic story, like for first El Cap route was Steve. But on the way down, I was like, free climbing is the way.
Right.
I'm like done with that.
Have you been back up to do multi-day walls since then?
No. I did freerider multi-day.
Okay.
But haven't done anything else since. Went up to do go back up on Golden Gate, but we can get into that.
Right.
Yeah, the year after climbing El Cap with Steve, I came back and did the freerider with my friend Callan, and then this last year I wanted to try and do Golden Gate.
Mm-hmm.
But
so, how long into your climbing career? And I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah, I feel like we need some more background.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because how long into
there.
your climbing career was it from sort of your beginnings to climbing the freerider? A couple, 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah, like 3 years.
That's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, like
I was definitely surprised. I was like pretty stoked.
Yeah. I mean, you were surprised, but I think you seemed like the kind of guy who had an idea that you had it in hand before you'd even go up there.
Yeah, I mean, if not the first time up it,
right?
Like eventually.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
So,
but it went all right.
Yeah, it did. I was like super fortunate to have my friend Callan, who doesn't really even climb. It was kind of comical. My partner that I was planning to try and like team free it with, had ended up having to bail and go back to Oregon to work. So I was just like, hey, Callan, I was like, you know how to jug? Like, you want to go climb El Cap with me? And he was like, he's pretty much down for anything. So so he just signed on, and we just quested up. It was pretty cool. I was psyched on the added challenge of trying to lead everything myself and like take that responsibility. Made it seem way more adventurous and committing. But then also having him, he was like helping me haul too, so it was like also easier in that sense.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we did it over 4 days. I fell on like 3 pitches and red pointed the whole thing. It was sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty like sharp trajectory, dude. I know you're kind of downplaying it a little bit.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
It's like one of the iconic hard free climbs. I mean, that's within, like normal people's ability, but
yeah, you've
in
done
the world.
freerider, right?
Yes, yeah, but not as good a style as that.
Well, it was also way before,
Right.
You kind of come into the valley nowadays and you're like, all right, if you want to be a free climber in the valley, like first thing up, freerider. Well, not really. Like you should like cut your teeth on the
Well, if
easier
you're
stuff
Adam
too,
Andres,
but-
it's the Don wall.
Yeah, go
You
straight
just
for the Don wall.
Go straight
Yeah.
to Don wall. But
I mean, I've heard people call Freerider like the Astroman of the current generation.
yeah,
And I kind of agree. It's hard to make that comparison because it's not it's El Cap. I mean, Astroman is only 12 pitches.
yeah,
or
it's
whatever.
quite a bit
But-
bigger deal.
Compared to like what people were free climbing at the time, it makes
Sure.
sense. You
Yeah,
know,
for
if you
sure.
like in the 70s or in 80s, if you wanted to be legit, you like did Astroman. So.
Right.
And same thing today with the Freerider. It's kind of like
Right.
the intro.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I definitely, I was wondering why I had you on the show. Up until
me
then.
too.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I asked you to come on the show because, again, you're of this generation, and I think again your career or whatever you want to call it, your trajectory, that's a better word for it actually, sticks out a little bit to me, and that's kind of how we ended up interacting. Plus, we got in touch a few times, but we were talking about the Golden Gate
Because Golden Gate,
yeah, I was up there suffering, and you
Yeah.
and I started talking a little bit about it because
Yeah,
you
I was
wanted some
psyched.
beta.
You were the first person I saw that season on Golden Gate, and I was planning to do it later on, so I was hoping to get
Some
get
guys
data.
actually had done it right before.
Yeah, Burned, and I feel bad, I forget his name, Sean, I think.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know
I
those
didn't meet
guys,
him. I
yeah.
just knew Josh just told me that people had topped out right when we got there. So, but and let's get into this. I asked you ahead of the show if you would talk about this, and we don't want to spend a ton of time on it because you're still a little mixed up about it. But your name is unfortunately associated with the accident that happened with Tim Klein and Jason Wells on the Freerider. Because you were, on Free Blast, because you were there below them and actually witnessed part of it.
Yeah, well, because we, a few days before, we had, that was like the point in the season where we're like, all right, we're ready to try Golden Gate. We hauled all of our gear up to Hollow Flake Ledge. But yeah, we had just started up the Free Blast when we met those guys. They got there maybe 15 minutes behind us. And since they were going for Salathé in a day, once we got to like the first natural ledge, triangle ledge, I think it's called, below $50 or so, we let those guys pass. And then, shortly after that accident occurred.
Yeah, and they fell past you, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to believe at the time, It didn't seem real because it's like kind of worst case scenario. It's not the thing you expect.
No, I mean,
while you're up
it's
there.
really an out there thing to have, on a rock climb, to have two people fall off together.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, have you seen the movie Vertical Limit?
Right.
I mean, it's like, we make fun of that movie because it's so unrealistic,
Right.
but that opening scene is kind of very similar.
And then you finished, and you guys were the folks that climbed with the third to the top
with
and
Kevin.
then came back down.
Yeah, because they were climbing as a party of three, and thankfully Kevin was removed from that. But yeah, I remember when that happened, I was hanging out underneath the $50, and I yelled down to my partner Jeremy to call search and rescue, and then after he got off the phone, he's like, "Dude, should we even keep climbing?" And I understood what he meant, but I was like, there's a third guy up there, and I don't know, like he's by himself, we gotta, we can't wrap anyway, but I was like, most importantly, we gotta make sure he's okay.
Faster in the long run to go up and
Yeah.
But you had to go get him.
Yeah. So I climbed that pitch and met up with Kevin, and then we joined as a party of three and went to the top of Mammoth and then wrapped down.
I mean, in talking about your short climbing career, like that's some heavy shit to have you see.
It is,
in anybody's climbing career, whether it's 2 years or 50 years, it's pretty heavy to see. And what I mean, obviously you probably went into emergency mode, compartmentalized it at the time. We got to get this guy up. We got to get down to the ground. What about afterwards, man? What? I mean, how are you feeling about it now?
Kind of more shaken up about it now than I kind of was at the time, honestly. Well,
I mean, in the moment, it's certain. Like I said,
in the moment, of course. No, I mean, it was pretty rattling. But once we got back on the ground, we were just like unsure what to do. We were like, do we go back up? Do we like leave the valley? Like how do we respond and to try and process this? And
right.
A lot of friends were telling us to take our time, and I don't think we took it as seriously as we probably should have, you know.
In terms of what kind of like...
Yeah. We just... I think we both just underestimated like the extent or the effect it was going to have on us in the long run. You know, we were kind of like, like I remember Jeremy was saying like, he's like, I don't think I'm going to be scared to go rock climbing. It's like, no, we're both terrified to go rock climbing kind of right now. So we're just
you did attempt to keep going, or
we did
just go get your stuff down?
Yeah. Well, all of our stuff was on Hollow Flake, so we had to go up there at some point to take it down. Right. Actually, Kevin Jorgensen and Ben Ruick offered to take our stuff down, and we were gonna let them do that at first, but then I don't know. It was just hard for me. I didn't want to let that accident overrule my season in Yosemite and focus too much on that tragedy, and it was hard for me to let go of, you know, my dream that I've been thinking about all year to do the Golden Gate, which of course doesn't matter at all in comparison, but we tried to hold on to that. We went back up like a week later, and it was obvious we got to the alcove, and neither of us were having a very good time. So we came down and kind of just went our separate ways to deal with it differently. Yeah, I mean, it's because I messaged you in there because I you know, there was this thing where all of a sudden your name was very much, both you guys' names were very much associated with this because you were being quoted here and there, and you were there, and plus you were part of the rescue. You know, you rescued the third, and I understood that it was probably, that's a hard thing to be associated with and be reminded of and things like that. But definitely, that was honestly the hardest part. Was kind of being tied up in that whole shitstorm afterwards, you know, I mean, because we had to do a lot of reports with the Rangers so they could get an accident report together and everything. But then all these people, you know, news reporters and people calling me to do articles and family members wanting to answer questions. And it was like, you know, I mean, I wanted to be as helpful as I could, but it was just like really hard for me when I was trying to just kind of move on and not think too much about it. Every time I got a message, even nice messages, like people being like, "Oh, like so sorry you had to see that." It's like, yeah, no, sorry, I appreciate it, but you get what I'm saying, though. Yeah, totally. It's like, oh, I'm not thinking about it. I thought of it when I went to send it. Yeah, I was just like, well, you know, you have to try to do those things. No, I agree. So. I would do the same thing, so I appreciate it. But yeah, at the same time, it's just like, oh, now I'm thinking about it. It was just hard to not be thinking about it constantly when I was like, all I want to do is just like keep climbing in Yosemite and not focus too much on it. Well, it's wild because we're, you know, it is this little fantasy bubble we create for ourselves in those worlds, and you kind of want climbing, it to be, you mean? Yeah, just like where nothing can go wrong. Yeah, or whatever. Yeah. But you want it to be bulletproof. Yeah, you want it to be, and you know, the idea too is always that kind of thing. Like, well, we should, you know, continue with honor the persons by continuing with what we love. And you know, there's all these like platitudes and things that go with it, but it ain't, I mean, what you guys witnessed, like I said, it was abnormal and it's very difficult to, I think it would be very difficult to process. And I've thought about you a lot with it. How do you feel about it right now? I mean, in terms of your attitude towards it, because I know, we spent a fair bit of time. We'll move on here in a second, but yeah, I mean, it's good to, people need to understand, you know, what it's like, because it can happen to you in a second, like it did. It can, yeah. It's easy. Yeah. It's easy to convince yourself that, I mean, yeah, we all hear about these accidents happening, but you kind of never really, you're like, oh, well, that would never happen to me, or oh, I'm never going to be there when shit hits the fan like that. But yeah, you never know. I mean, and we're both pretty young. Neither of us have ever really witnessed anything epic like that at all. And the fact that it was a climbing accident just makes it hit home a little bit more. So yeah, I'd say just a little, I notice I'm more scared about rock climbing in general. Normally I'm like, I have a pretty good head game. Yeah. So just a lot of irrational fear right now. You know, thinking like ropes are going to cut or gear's going to rip or whatever. Partners are just come flying down. It's like, yeah, it's kind of messed up, but a lot of it's irrational. So I'm kind of just trying to work through that logically, and then, yeah, just accept the randomness of it. You know, like I don't really know what else to do at this point.
Are you doing anything specifically?
Actually, supposed to meet with Arno Ilgner tomorrow. Yeah,
Okay.
I kind of, a friend had maybe mentioned that he could be helpful.
Right.
So yeah, I'm supposed to talk to him
Right.
tomorrow, but that's kind of it.
And
Just-
you've got
just taking time, really.
Right.
Just not doing anything big at the moment. Just kind of take it easy.
Did you or you've got a season planned in the fall? Yeah.
Yeah. Planning to go back in October or November or something.
Okay.
Not sure if we'll get back on Golden Gate at that time.
Right.
I'll maybe save it for the spring. Not sure yet. But.
Right. Yeah, because that'll be a hurdle, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
When we did go back up, we were like, all right, screw the free blast, screw the ethics. I don't care what people say. We just jugged up hard and kept going.
No one would say anything. That was
I know.
Because that's how most people do it.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's all I'm doing right now to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so are you pursuing a professional end of this thing in terms of climbing?
Well, I'm at the OR show. So.
I mean, yeah, you are. But I mean, there's like kind of, look, I've been to, OR shows for a couple decades, and there's always climbers poking around, trying to see what it's like and talk to a couple people. But there's that, and then there's like, this is my path, and this is specifically what I'm trying to do, and versus like, I'm going to go to R and see some friends and maybe,
right.
I'll get some shoes or something like that. That's always been kind of the way it is. It's partially why I wanted to talk to you a little bit.
Yeah.
So where's your mindset with that?
Well, like I said, when before whatever activity I'm kind of into, I always go kind of full on.
Right.
And like I was trying with soccer, I mean, I was obsessed with the professional soccer scene and college soccer, and I kind of held on to that dream for a long time. And but I think deep down, I always knew I was never good enough and just wasn't going to be able to cut it. But and eventually, I had to give that up. But with climbing, I don't know. It feels different, and just watching, all the people that I've met on the road and people I look up to make me think that it's possible. So I kind of am trying to make it work now. I mean, everybody has. I feel like anybody who's serious about climbing has the dream of climbing full time. So
right.
There's many ways you can make that work, and I'm just trying to figure out how to make it work for myself right now. So yeah.
And what are your personal goals climbing? I mean, obviously we talked about the Golden Gate, but maybe more like, do you have an idea of being a world traveler? Do you have an idea of being an alpinist? Do you have any of those sorts of ideas?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, part of the reason why I end up going back to Yosemite every season is because I don't have my shit together enough to like go overseas right now. I'd like to.
You mean financially? And
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It's easy to save up enough money to drive 6 hours to Yosemite and then hang out in one spot the whole time,
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely. When I started climbing in San Diego or Southern California, my main goal was to be a Yosemite climber. And, I feel like I'm on the right path to doing that. And now my goal is to just be well-rounded. I mean, you kind of have to be well-rounded to succeed in Yosemite anyways. But I'd like to take the skills that I learned there and take them to other places. Yeah, just becoming more well-rounded in bouldering and sport climbing. And then, traveling to the big mountains.
Right. What's your motivation for sport climbing and bouldering like?
Well, I'm realizing that to send the gnar on El Cap, you have to be able to pull hard.
Right.
I mean, freerider, like you've talked about it in numerous episodes, it's a lot of pretty moderate climbing, like it's not super sustained with all these like 513 cruxes. It's like one pitch of 513 and a little bit of 512 and then a bunch of burly 510 and 511. So one of the reasons why I set Golden Gate as a goal, not only because it's like technically the second easiest free route on El Cap, but it was also because I knew it would force me to train my weaknesses, because a lot of the cruxes on that are, facey or bouldery cracks and basically sport climbing pitches. So
they're not exactly sport climbing pitches.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's require more of a sport climbing fitness than
because I've heard I've gotten that before. It's like, isn't the crux bolted? I'm like, but you don't quite get it. It's like, well, and the traverse pitch looks like a sport climb because
the
it's
A5.
Yeah. Because it's got gear all over it, but it's all like the jankiest pins you've ever seen, like in the worst tat you've ever seen in your life.
I kind of like that though. I feel like
cool. Yeah.
in a weird way that can make you perform better because it seems more committing. Or whatever. I mean, and like it would be committing regardless. I mean, you're like 2,500 feet up El Cap at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a daunting task because you, like you just said, you need power, you need all those skills, but to do those pitches that high on the route, you've got to have a super deep well of endurance too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I'm glad I have that base.
It's a big undertaking for sure.
Yeah.
Is kind of, every day as it seems in a way, like from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
That, everybody's just up there free climbing away, and like firing off all this sort of stuff. But then you dig through it and that's actually not quite the case. It's
a lot
the
of
usual
toiling.
Suspects are up there hammering it out. But
I like the fact that, free climbing big walls or just climbing big walls in general is like pretty blue collar, you know? Like from the beginning, I always thought it was way cooler to send 513 halfway up El Cap after like 4 days of toiling than like, just climbing 513 off the ground.
Yeah.
I've never been able to perform that well in like a single pitch scenario.
Right.
All of my like most glorious moments in my mind have been on like big walls.
Right.
In Yosemite.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too because you think about, the Dawn Wall, and that's, I think, the second ascent of the Dawn Wall, Adam's ascent. If you really start tearing that apart in terms of climbing and what he did and how badass it was, it doesn't get its due because it's the second ascent, and the whole Kevin story is just so grand and so full of all this.
And it's
stuff
been around for a long time. Yeah.
And then it's like, and then Adam did the second ascent. But what he fucking did,
it's pretty mind-blowing.
To walk into Yosemite and everybody's like, you need to learn how to climb here.
Yeah.
And he was just like, no, I don't.
Yeah, totally.
And then, and the other thing I remember him saying that it was a lot scarier than he thought it would be. And again, like from the footage and stuff, everybody's like, well, they've got all their draws in place and everything else, but they're clipped to all this junk.
Yeah, because that's like a mixture. I don't understand entirely. You would know better than I would, but that route in particular is just a mixture of a bunch of old aid routes, right? So they're like clipping all these old copperheads and like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's junk.
Yeah.
So it's pretty rad, and like
totally,
it's just not as famous. But again, when you sit down and start tearing it apart, the fact that he showed up in Yosemite, and then there was the 7-year attempt. Which had, him finding the route and everything else. But then, what was a couple weeks? Dude. Went up and fired.
I know. I hope he comes back to try and on-site the South That'd be sick.
I think it's in the offing.
Okay.
So
I hope so.
Yeah. But it's just, when we start talking about wall climbing and the fact that he did that is pretty rad. So
I agree. I got a lot of inspiration for that. It's like, but for the record, most climbers, I think, should put the time in Yosemite to try and succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I learned that very much the hard way.
Yeah.
2 months ago. Like I didn't expect to free it at any point. But I expected to do better and be more comfortable up there than I was. But it comes down to two things. I'm not in that great a shape being a dad, but it had everything to do with thinking I could walk into Yosemite after a decade and just pick up where I left off.
Right. Yeah.
And that just did not happen.
Yeah. It doesn't,
there's been changes
I don't think it happens
in me
for anybody,
too,
really,
except for Adamandro.
Right.
But
did you not climb anything before getting up on it?
No.
Oh,
we didn't have time.
Full on. Yeah. That would feel like totally scary.
Yeah. Well, and we did break your rule and come back to the ground.
Yeah.
But the fact that we basically went on site from the ground, at least for the Golden Gate part.
Yeah, totally.
Is actually, I came to realize, is a little bit unusual for people to even bother doing that.
I think that's like, I've gotten in arguments with people about that. I think ground up is like the coolest way to do it. So,
for sure.
Yeah, right.
It's the coolest way, but is it the most expedient way?
No, definitely
No,
not.
right.
But when you're local, it's like
Yeah.
you can always go back, even
Right.
though you're in Colorado, you know?
Right.
So that's what we were planning to do, is to like go ground up. We
Yeah.
went ground up on Freerider, and I was like, oh man, like that's like the coolest thing
Right.
ever,
Right.
you know? So at least if it's like, I feel like if it's within your ability, it's way more fun to give yourself that opportunity to try and go ground up than like toiling around wrapping in
Right.
and all that nonsense.
Yeah, it's toiling for sure.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'm older school than you are.
Yeah.
And
I
like
know.
when, you know, I even talk about like when I tried to free the Moonlight Buttress
Oh, right. Cool.
long time ago. It had been freed.
Like
I
what
mean,
year?
It would have been early aughts, probably.
Okay.
Like,
When it was still hard.
yeah, is it not hard anymore?
No, I mean, it's still hard for me.
Yeah.
but
nevertheless, we were, even then, I had this residual effect of that. The idea of being on a climb and falling and then pulling the rope and red pointing that pitch, that was not something, it wasn't something that we were against. It was something that we didn't even realize people did. And so the first time we climbed it, and it was a partner style ascent,
right.
I fell off up on the one of the last 512A pitches or 12B pitches or whatever, like the puzzle pitch or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was it. I was like, oh.
And you're like, oh, I blew it.
Yeah, I blew it. We don't get to free it this time.
Oh.
And it's just like, but
Pull
I
her up, try it. I get what
still-
you're saying, though.
I
yeah.
still have the residue of that is still in my DNA of like, no, you start from the ground and you climb it, and if you fall, you didn't free it. If you make it, then you freed it. Which,
yeah.
I mean, that's a completely unusable ethic.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, and on an El Cap route and stuff like that. Because it's just like, who has time to just be like, oh, you're like on pitch 30, you're like, I fell, and you got to start over again.
Yeah.
Super dumb. But it just was, I mean, talking about like how ethics have changed and attitudes have changed. But I don't know why it didn't even occur to us that was happening. But anyway.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So yeah, don't put too many rules on yourself.
Yeah.
But it is fun. It is fun to have your rules and to like, you know, have your style points that you're trying to hit.
Yeah.
You know, because when I was doing walls, I got to the point where I wouldn't fix ropes.
Yeah, nice.
I would just,
Cool.
if
I
I
think that's
slept on the
bogus.
top of the first pitch, then I slept on the top of the first pitch. You know, so, but it was just a rule that I just came up with. And also it was, you know, it's hard to find a place to sleep on the floor, on the valley floor.
Yeah.
It kind of made sense to just haul your
Free
stuff up
bivvy
there
up on
and
El Cap.
and start climbing, you know.
Yeah, you
so.
just set up a portaledge, then you don't have to deal with Camp 4.
Right, exactly. So, but you know, there were these rules, and I had rules about if I was soloing, I couldn't get any help carrying loads either.
Like up or down.
Yeah, up or down.
Yeah.
Because you're on a solo.
That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
kind of that's what attracts me to like, or makes me respect people who solo walls, is like you're doing every ounce of effort for the whole climb
Right.
from bottom to top. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you know, it has its advantages too, socially. I mean, you can
You mean
just,
like you don't need a partner?
yeah. Well, and also you just, when I would go up, if you fail, you failed because of you.
Yeah, right. That's kind of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like having the opportunity to lead the whole free riders. Like, you know, I'm the only person that is going to get us to the top,
Right.
or not, or fail. You know.
Yeah.
I kind of like assuming that. amount
Yeah,
of
it's heavy.
responsibility.
It can be heavy
Yeah.
too, but it's fun.
Brings out the best or worst in you sometimes.
Right,
You know.
Totally. So, well, cool, man. Well, thanks for sitting down.
Yeah.
I know you were a little like skeptical about why I got in touch with you,
A little bit.
but
yeah.
a lot of the folks that sit down on this are like that. They're just like,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I appreciate the call. Stoked to be here.
yeah, and you know, I appreciate your attitude. I think you've got a good head on your shoulders in terms of getting after climbing, and like I said, I find it really interesting to see what you're doing, and there's a lot of like media being put out by climbers right now that I have no interest in whatsoever. So,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, try and keep it as real as I can. You know, just following the example of the people I looked up to back in the day.
the Stone Masters.
The Stone Masters,
Minus
dude.
the drugs.
Yeah, minus the drugs. Don't do drugs.
Okay, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Jordan for sitting down. He seems surprised that I gave him a call, come on the show, but I don't think he should have been. He deserves some recognition for what he's up to. And I want the Enormocast to be an early adopter. Jordan Cannon's like the band I saw first, even though I don't have the t-shirt to prove it. Okay, folks, guess what? If you're here, if you're still listening, if you've been through the advertising and you've listened to the episode and you're still hanging out for the ending and the quote and all the things that happen here at the end, you're the kind of person that needs to go look at my shop. I have a shop at Enormocast.com. After 7 years, I'm selling merch. People have been telling me to sell merch for 7 years. Finally selling some merch. Some new t-shirts and also some great hats from Peter W. Gilroy. Made some custom hats for the Enormocast. Go check them out. Pick them up. Get one for every member of the family. Grandma will look great in a flat brim or trucker hat. No doubt. And of course, help yourself this fall as you're climbing. Be careful out there and check your knot.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.